Good afternoon, Southern Institutions. We have the esteemed honor of having our House counterpart in. Alice Emmons is going, Chair Alice Emmons, I apologize, Chair. She's going to start us down through what they have done to the Capitol bill so far. It hasn't passed the House yet. She's working diligently to get that done. And Chair Emmons, welcome to Southern Institutions, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Spent many good times around this table negotiating back in the old days.
Can't get rid of me. I'm still here.
And vice versa. Purple. That's right. We're purple. We're coordinated. This is a very different bill than what we normally do, a capital budget, because we have so much cash. We're also working with the general fund. And maybe what I'll do first is just lay out how the spreadsheet is done, because it's done a little bit different. And the green is what the governor proposed, and the blue is what we proposed, and then of course what the difference is in gold. Okay, what is highlighted really shows where we move money around, and then this, if you go to the next to the last page, down to lines lines 152. That's the amount there for 2 years for bonded dollars, which is our 108 million, 54 each year. We're saying it's what the Debt Affordability Committee acknowledged. We also have 14.767 million in reallocations. That's a little bit more than what the governor did, because I have a committee in my committee, 3 folks that we call the repro group, that works with JFO to see, do a deeper dive, and sometimes they find more money than what was in the governor's recommend. Where all the highlights are is where there were some changes, and we came in at about 700,000 more than what the governor had. So you add that together, and you end up with a total capital bill of 122,767,000 and change.
All your changes are in yellow, right?
All of our changes are in yellow. And the last page is where the general fund resides. Okay. The first part is, we've also got language, this is what we call the cash fund. And we're trying to get away from the term cash
Reserve.
fund. So we've worked with our appropriations committee, and the title is going to be Capital Infrastructure Reserve Fund. They have language in the appropriations bill in terms of what the fund could be used for. And we're basically saying it can be used for any eligible capital project. It has to be, the Debt Affordability Committee cannot look at the balance that's in the reserve fund and then drop the bonding level accordingly. And also, now I lost my train of thought. The reserve fund needs to be, when the governor presents his capital budget, also needs to present those projects that will be funded through the reserve fund for that. And also, we have language in our bill that indicates that we could still go through that same process for reallocations as we do for bonded dollars for the reserve fund. That if expenditures haven't been done, 2 years is the trigger, but we really look back 5 years, and if those are still unspent, then we can pull them back and reallocate them.
So reallocate into the reserve fund, or just generally reallocate?
What the capital budget does, what the capital bill does, it authorizes the projects. And then there's a dollar amount for that. If those dollars have not been expended and that project hasn't gone forward, then those dollars can be freed up in the reserve fund to be used for other projects in the capital.
And okay, so they stay in the capital.
The reserve fund is just for the capital bill. We're explicit in the language there. The concern is if folks know that there's a balance in a cash fund, it can be converted to something else. So we just wanted to put some real guardrails around that.
May I ask one more question on that? Yeah, I think reserve is a better word. Did you establish any sort of criteria of why something would be funded out of the reserve fund versus the regular capital?
Now, we wanted to clarify because there was real confusion last year and there was confusion this year in terms of when the budget was originally presented by the administration. But their thinking was that the fund would be used for planning. Then we were seeing, as we started going through the line items, we started seeing that some of that fund was used for site acquisition, some of it was used for construction. And it's like, well, in your testimony right along, you've been saying it's only for planning and design documents. It's not for site acquisition and construction, though in your budget, you have done this. So we really wanted to clarify, and we've been very clear, it would be available for the whole spectrum across the board for projects, from planning to actual construction.
Okay.
But to be very clear, it has to come through, the governor has to put it through the capital budgeting process, and be presented as part of the capital budget.
Great, thank you, that's very helpful.
Is there any way, Madam Chair, you can just start first for right now, each one?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You mean for the cash piece or for the regular?
Oh, yeah, I was confused about that. On the original spreadsheet, we had a separate column for that.
Yeah, we've changed the whole thing. We've worked with our joint fiscal office.
Okay.
Legal counsel. to
Yeah.
coordinate.
The changes.
It's tough. So the last page is all the reserve fund is section 17, section 18 is what the governor's general fund that was originally 62 million. We are 32 million. And
Okay.
I can go into the big moving pieces, but we can start at the beginning. So at the beginning, this is very clear. It's what we've done every year, major maintenance. With BGS, there was 2 million that was proposed for general fund in that. We looked at last year's bill. Last year's bill had 7 million each year for major maintenance. And the governor proposed 8 and 8.5, so already there was a $2 million increase. And there was an extra 2 million, so we ended up zeroing out that 2 million. Fiscal securities enhancements, we kept the governor's recommend. And planning, reuse, and contingency, we kept the governor's recommend, as well as the governor put in 250 for general fund there. For cash fund, that was cash fund.
Yeah.
We kept that in there. I'm going by memory on some of this, so correct me if I'm wrong. What we did with McFarland, this is down in Barry, re-roof and brick facade is to complete the project. Let's do it. And then the Bennington Monument, this is to set up safety fencing. They're going to be doing some major repairs on the monument and scaffolding in the upcoming
That's a
years.
scary future, huh?
Yes, so this is to protect the public for that. Brattleboro Courthouse roof replacement, let's get it done. This project will get it done. We accepted the governor's recommend. And the Middlesex Central Services roof replacement. This is a lot of where the archives are and the BGS operations for printing, and they have a leaking roof there. So let's get that done. The Middlesex Therapeutic, this is where the secure residential used to be with the modulars up in Middlesex. The new facility in Essex is opening up in June, so we need to figure out what to do with the modulars and what to do with that site, because it also holds the state police barracks that has now been empty. The state police have moved to Berlin. So what we did, there was about 150,000 that was in the cash fund. So we have added that to bonded dollars, say, let's get this done. Because some of that 150 was originally for planning, but might be involved in some, not demolition of the modular units, but getting them out of there. So we said, let's do it all in bonding. So we moved the 150 from the cash to this, and we split it up over 2 years, knowing we had BAA come January.
Yep.
They may be able to do something with the modulars to either sell them or repurpose them somewhere, we don't know. State House replacement of historic interiors, this was cash, we moved it to bonded. This has been ongoing, it's to keep the building up. There's a lot of wear and tear in this building on flooring and rugs and furniture and all sorts of things. So we started this a couple of years ago.
The state sheets,
Yes,
we never said anything about it.
he's happy. State House HVAC system renovations. We have put in to date about 7.3 billion in this project, in FY22 and FY23. This is to keep the project going, to finish this floor and our floor, the chamber, and then figure out what we need to do with the mezzanine and the cafeteria. That's to figure out if we're doing an expansion or not. So we kept this funding. There are supply chain issues. What was supposed to have been done this past summer and fall for this floor down here, the parts still have not come in. We were hoping they would be in so they could do the work last fall. That did not happen. And then the air handling system for our committee rooms and the 2 chambers. That was supposed to have been ordered and delivered last fall. The delivery is 20 to 40 weeks out. So this project is being delayed. We did put in language that there would be a check-in on this project to both committees. So going forward. 133 State Street, this is for our legislative IT. We had put in, I believe it was over 2 million, 2.1 million. This is to move Kevin Moore and all of his folks to 133 State Street. This was all negotiated back in 22, during the 22 session. And then we put in more money last year to upgrade that site, fit it up, and now they need another 200,000. And this is to move the server from downstairs in the basement here to 133 State Street and move all of Kevin's folks there from 9 Baldwin. And then once they leave 9 Baldwin, then we'll put that in the numbers. Newport Courthouse, we put in 750,000 for planning.
Go back to the 250, the one up above it, the Montpelier State House expansion project.
Oh, did
Why-
I miss that?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, let me explain that. I am sorry. State House expansion, we have put in last year in the general fund, ARPA dollars, 1.5 million. To look at options on how we move forward with the State House expansion. And the thinking has been to put a floor above the cafeteria, move the cafeteria, kitchen, serving, dining area up to that top floor and convert that whole area into, I think, 5 community rooms. And then when we get that done, we can free up the big rooms down.
Don't we have to okay that first?
We do. And what,
Expansion in the first place.
yes, we've put in a process for this.
Oh.
So
and my other question would be is why did you bond them instead of cash? Because kind of the idea of the cash fund is to, when you're doing the planning is to just spend the cash.
we didn't want to spend the cash. We kept some cash in reserve above from the government. We didn't spend 1.7 million. We spent 19 million, we spent 17. So there's more money in the reserve fund under our bill than under the government's books. So what we did for the State House HVAC, we put in 1.5 million in ARPA dollars. Some of those ARPA dollars can be used and some can't. BGS has contracted with Freeman French Freeman. They're coming back with some options in June of this year. So once the options are chosen, whichever option can be chosen, schematic design will then occur and be done in November of this year. from that June presentation, we have put in language in the back of the bill that, let's take a step back here just to explain what the thinking is. When we lost the Waterbury complex, we had to make some decisions off session in terms of which option we were going to go forward. We were revolving around a couple options, but no decision time-wise had been made. We needed more information. So we set in process. Joint Fiscal Committee is the only committee that can really make a decision off session for the legislative body. Our standing committees cannot do that. So we set up a situation with this with a JFC, Joint Fiscal Committee, with the two chairs of the institutions committee being members at that time, specifically for the Waterbury complex and how we're going to go forward. We modeled that for the State House expansion, but we didn't use the Joint Fiscal Committee. We used the Joint Legislative Management. And the Joint Management Committee would also, for this specific decision, have the chairs of the two institutions committees as members, thinking that the chairs of the two committees would reach out to their committee members for feedback and recommendation. So that when Freeman French Freeman and BGS presents their options in June, the Joint Legislative Management Committee would then take a look, make a decision, and then that would allow BGS to get into schematic designs to be presented in November of this year. So come in January, we can then make a decision how we move forward. So it doesn't stop the process. And so you can look on the membership of your Joint Legislative Management Committee. It has a speaker, it has a Senate Pro Tem, and it has members of 4 members from the House. They have 3 members at large and 3 senators at large. So there's language in the back of the bill that we've done that. I don't have enough hot air.
This airflow in this room is like,
You have an override to the
God.
system. No.
I know, we had an override, all right, the last 40 years.
I turned you off, sir.
So that's the State House expansion. Newport Courthouse replacement, we're still trying to find land. We front loaded this a little bit to help BGS. They may need a little bit more flexibility in where they're looking for land. So we front loaded this, and I believe there's also some cash for, I'm not sure. Yes, there's also 500,000 in FY25 in cash. Now, hopefully maybe we can start construction, but we gotta get land first.
Alice, we spent some money on that last year already. Did we spend?
Yes, and I forgot, I'm not sure how much money we put in, 1.5.
I thought it was 1.5 that we spent on that.
Well, we haven't spent. It's still
Okay.
there.
Good.
We've gotta get land.
Okay.
Get the planning and designing business next time around. $750,000 for this, $750 million for planning and design. God.
We missed our call.
Yeah. Planning and design, that's crazy.
Well, it's also, you know, they need some of this for land purchase to help.
Oh, it doesn't say that, it said planning and design.
The next one, St. Albans Correctional Facility, this is roof replacement. We said this will get it done. We agreed with the governor's recommend. And the same with the door controls. 2.75, we hope to get this done. And now we have some language as well in the back that deals with Department of Corrections and how we do our renovations and new construction. In terms of trauma informed. We got some language in the back I'll go through. But it's also connected a little bit to this line item so that whenever DOC or BGS. Whenever BGS does any renovations, maintenance, or construction, they have to take into consideration that they are evidence-based, can't think of the term, but that results into a trauma-informed process. White River Junction Courthouse renovations, this is the governor's recommend, and there's probably some planning and construction in this, and whenever we get into some of these like courthouses or the DMV on 20 State Street, we may need to relocate staff. So that's also included. 3-acre parcel, we've been doing 3-acre parcels the last couple of years. And some of this is going to continue being used for planning, some design, and maybe even some construction of some small areas. You might be able
This is all stuff you agree with the governor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you single out your ones you changed? That would be helpful.
So the R22 refrigerant, we just cut back that a little bit, knowing that next year, the big slug is next year, and we have BAA. We did add a line item for our state buildings. And that is a result of H102 that is headed your way. We really worked on cleaning up that chapter that dealt with art and state buildings. Art and state buildings has been about $50,000 per year.
Is that just in the state house you're talking about, or all state buildings?
It is connected to projects that are done in the Capitol bill. And there's a whole process between the Arts Council and there's a State House Advisory Committee
Right.
that will make a decision in terms of which project that's funded in the Capitol bill would be the recipient of a piece of art for that particular project, that particular building. In the past, we used to have this as a line item of $50,000. There's an art acquisition fund that is established, and the money goes into that fund, and then when the project is picked and the art is picked, the money for that art project is pulled from that fund. What is happening with the $50,000, it's not covering the costs anymore of the commission for the art or the artist. The artist sometimes is just giving a lot of their time for this. We have had this as a line item in the past, and then I think it was probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, we kind of just say it's incorporated in the project cost, like say the Brattleboro Courthouse, or it could be the Newport Courthouse. You know, we're doing a new courthouse in Newport, that project could be picked down the road for a piece of art. We'd say, well, the $50,000 will come out of project costs, which really makes it hard for BGS. So we're saying, let's do a line item. Do 75,000, that's what H102 does. And then you folks, when you get H102 and get a walkthrough, you'll see what the process is.
Okay.
For the projects.
22.
You took 25,000 out.
Right, we took 25,000 out of Newport. This is a boiler. We do have cash in this to do the planning, I believe. And this is to do some construction, and it's to go, but we have 600,000 in cash to do the planning. They have a chunk wood boiler, so it's to replace that. It's aging out and it's go down to the Agency of Human Services. The committee really feels strongly about our correctional facilities and the conditions for the residents there as well as our staff. There are 2 correctional facilities that are fully air conditioned, Chittenden and Marble Valley. The others are not. We put in $500,000 last year for BGS to start looking at planning for where we could install HVAC systems in the other facilities. The committee is really feels this is very important
What's the 300 for? Is that for?
Planning and design, I would
There's
say.
language.
You said you already did the planning design.
Well, no, they haven't.
Oh, so they got 500,000?
Well, they spent a little bit, but even this isn't gonna get us to construction because they need to figure out, which facility to do. And we've put language in the back of the bill that, and Eric, you might wanna help me on this one, or Jennifer. There is, like, the Springfield facility is that HVAC system. It's not air conditioned. One or two rooms, might be like a day room or a break room, but the facility isn't. But that HVAC system is coming to an end of its lifespan. So do we just look and do a few rooms there, or do we look at replacing the whole facility? If we did the whole facility, what BGS testified, it's about 4 million
It's 19 million for all facilities.
for all facilities, but
I don't remember.
I think it's about 4 million.
I don't remember what it was for
I-
Springfield.
Eric Philcorn, BGS, I pulled up an email from like a year ago, and back of the envelope at that time was about 5 million just for Springfield. It was 19 million for everything, and that was even before everything really went through the roof. So it's not
It's not cheap.
cheap.
So you got Newport, you got St. Johnsbury, you got St. Albans, and you have Springfield. So we've put in 300,000 FY '24, 700,000 FY '25. Hoping that maybe some of this money could also be used, maybe in a situation at St. Johnsbury, or Newport, or Springfield, or St. Albans, maybe to provide some air conditioning in those common rooms. But you gotta do it in the context of possibly a bigger plan.
Right.
So we've put language in the back of the bill for some flexibility there for BGS and DOC to look at both, and where possible to expend some of this money.
So that's a new line item.
It's new.
Okay.
And then the women's correctional facility, we
Yep.
just took $1 million out of that. That really comes from the Cherry Street reallocation. And we kept the 1.5 million in the cash. And then
And the youth and patient beds is gone.
that, the juvenile justice involved, that's in cash, and that's in the back.
Okay.
We kept that at $1 million. Okay?
Yep.
Commerce community development, we kept the same. Building community grants, we kept the same. See, the ed, we kept the same. We switched around the colleges. Where they go? They didn't go anywhere. They are in they're in the cash, general fund. They are on line 189.
Give them some books.
Yeah.
So what we did,
Easy committee, easy over.
what we did, there's 4 items that were listed. There was major maintenance at over 4 million. There was transformation planning at $1 million. There was the construction of Green Hall, I believe that was 1.5, and Vale Hall in Linden, that was 2.9 million. And the Vale Hall, 2.9, I think is for FY '25. So in testimony that we received, they weren't sure how far along they really were gonna get from Green Hall. And with the money for Vale being in FY '25, they still have to design that for Green Hall. So what we did, we combined those line items. They could move money between the 4 line items. And we gave them a little shade of 9 million, because if they are gonna go forward with Vale Hall, that's a $2.9 million project. They're not gonna do any construction in 2000. They might do a little bit of design for that, but maybe not. So we said, let's do 9 million. We're back in January. We can reevaluate this in BAA. Let's see how far along they go in the transformation planning, how far along they get with the major maintenance, and see where they are with Green Hall, and then what their thinking is with Vale. So that's what we did there. Lump them together, they can move money between the 4. They gave them that flexibility. Oh, boy.
I see it, A and R, did we get that?
Yeah, A&R.
Yeah.
Now, this one is really different. I may depend on Dan to help with this. We went back to sort of the old way of how we used to do this for forests and parks and for fish and wildlife. So let me start. DEC, this is our regular drinking water state revolving loan fund. We kept what the governor wanted. That's our 20%. That is not the infrastructure bill at all. This is what we always do every year to make sure we can draw down. This is our state share of federal dollars. We kept what the governor recommended. The dam safety and the hydrology, we cut that back a little bit. Last year, we put in, I don't have my money, we put in close to $3 million last year for dam safety. They're doing a risk assessment for hazard, significant hazard, and they haven't spent much of that $3 million. And we're saying, and you want another $1 million? We're saying, let's $500,000. You got $3 million last year. They're still assessing which dams would be high hazard dams so that they can focus these dollars to that high hazard. We're back next January. We can see where they were in spending $3 million from last year and where they are in spending this $500,000 this year. That's why we nicked them a little bit. Forests and parks. This is their park system, infrastructure rehab, and we combine the 3-acre parcel for stormwater. We combine that into one line. And instead of having the 2 lines. So that comes in at $3,750,000. We did not cut them. It was the same amount. Again, they can move money between those 2 line items. That's why we did it. We gave them more flexibility. We did the same thing with forests and parks, the open access recreational infrastructure and recreational access points. We did the same thing there. Combined them, and it comes in at $768,863. And they can move money between those 2. Because when we took testimony, they just aren't sure how much of those dollars they're going to get out.
That's the same as the governor.
Same as the governor, but we
Okay.
just combined them. Fish and Wildlife, we, again, combined all of their projects, and in the testimony that we received, it really came through really clear that, you know, some of these projects may not go ahead as quickly as they thought. They're still working on some projects, and then it may incorporate some money from another project that's on these individual lines. So again, we combined, if you're looking at the old spreadsheet, we combined lines 104 through 108 in the governor's spreadsheet. 104 through 108, and that is now our line 69 in this spreadsheet, and we cut them back a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, and we kept the rest, forests and parks, 170. That one I'm blanking out. I think we kept that the same, I believe.
Yeah, same as the governor.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, the only one next one is the, fire, dry hydrant. How come you gave more money?
Oh, they're way over there?
Well, I see your next yellow line. I'm looking at the yellow.
Right, but the clean water, I just want to bring out, there was an item in the clean water and the governor's recommend, which was municipal pollution grants. That was in the general fund, 62 million. And I'll explain that when I get to that part. We did increase the dry hydrants. We had them in, and you know, it's been $100,000.
What is that, man?
They did, but we asked the question.
Oh,
And we
that's
said,
not, did you ask them to want more money?
no, we didn't ask them if they wanted more money. We asked them if the cost of installing the hydrants is going up. And they're also getting into maintenance and repairs. And they said the equipment, the cost of materials is increasing. And they said, we you know, we're not asking for an increase of the materials, it's getting to be a tight squeeze. So the
That's
committee,
not money extra, wow. it's great.
only 50,000.
Only 50,000.
So we said, you know, it's a good program, it's helped a lot of communities. It's been at 100,000 since the mid-90s. And you can't get as much for 100,000 as you could 30 years ago. Was that 30 years ago? Then the vet's home, we didn't change anything. It looks it.
Yeah, it does. I found a couple of them in the cash section.
Well, what we did here, the 260 and the 230, remember I mentioned in our reallocation, we have a little group called the repro group?
Yep.
Well, they came across $490,000 that is, how old was it? 4 years, 5?
Some of it goes back to 2012, 2013. It's been out there for a while.
That they haven't spent.
Yep.
But people didn't feel comfortable pulling the money and reallocating it to the bottom line, another project. So we're giving the vets home one more shot. So we're pulling it back, but we're keeping it in section 14, highlighted for these two items, for maintenance and then for furnishings and secure systems, which they were intended for to begin with. And give them another year and see where they are. We're not pulling them back, we're saying, and get rid of it from the vets home. We're pulling it back and giving them another chance.
The elevator upgrade and the generator. are-
That was the governor's
Yeah.
recommend.
Okay.
And then you can see all these reallocations, and that may change as you folks start working. because the invoices are coming in. So let's go to the reserve fund.
Yeah.
The Newport replacement line 177, we bumped that up to bonded dollars. The BPS, the stack area in the pavilion, they had $1 million, and that was for planning in FY '25. And we said, in FY '25, how important is it really? And so we nipped them by 800,000. So we're gonna be back in January, we can revisit this, but it's like, you know, it's just tying that money out of the reserve fund for what? Let's take a look at it. The Middlesex master plan, that 150, we want that to bonded dollars because they may need to do some construction or site work in FY '24. And then those state house historic material conditions, we felt that was more for bonded. So that's what we did. So the governor in FY '24 spent 8.3 million. We spent 7.3. And in FY '25, the governor spent 10.8, we spent 10. So we've saved 1.7. And that stays in the reserve fund. Okay? So let's go to the biggie, which
Yeah.
was the 62 million. So we went through this and we just put it on the board, listed everything, put it on the board, and the committee had a discussion. What are we gonna do? What are the priorities here? What can we get done? What are we gonna do? It's a 1-year thing. So the 2 million for major maintenance, we zeroed that out, explained that earlier. Major maintenance already was bumped up. You know how we act at the end if we got money on the bottom line and we put it in major maintenance? That's what this looks like. We kept the electric vehicle charging stations. This is at all state-owned offices, buildings. I explained the state colleges. We can get that a little bit. The one that's really going to stand out for you folks is the 27 million. Okay, so let me explain what happened there. I went to JFO and asked, what do we need for our match? 24 and 25, because we don't want to leave federal dollars on the table. Nobody wants to leave federal dollars on the table. So I wanted to know what our match requirements were for FY '24 and '25. So when Joint Fiscal looked at this, last year we put in 2.8 million in FY '23 for our federal, for the match for the IIJA. We put in 2.8 million last year's capital. 27 million includes that 2.8. So they don't. So we said, okay, so you're down to 24.4, 24.2 million. What you need for a match in FY '24 is 2.9 million. What you need for a match in FY '25 is 6.7. What JFO said to us, the feds only do it on a year-by-year basis. They only release their money a year at a time. So in FY '23, the 2.8 is only gonna meet the fiscal year '23 dollars the feds will release. FY '24 will only match those federal fiscal year '24 dollars the feds will release. The same with '25. They're not gonna release all the money at once. It's a year-by-year thing. So we have met our match of 9.7 million for FY '23, FY '24, and FY '25. The committee has felt quite strongly we have always met our match because we have the regular 1 to 5 match for our drinking water and our clean water in our regular, in the rest of our bill. We've always met that state match. We do not want to leave federal dollars on the table. Plus, our towns are gonna have to get their projects in place. They're gonna have to do the design work. They're gonna have to get a bond vote passed locally before they can get these dollars. So a lot of the pressure right now is gonna be on our municipalities to get these projects done. So I know that looks like a big hit. We've met our match. We've put more money into the reserve fund to help go towards that match for the out years. We're committed to making the match in the out years as well, even though we haven't put the money there, it's because we've always had our match. We're not gonna leave money on the table, but now you're just banking money and just letting it sit there for 3 years before you can use it. We did keep the 4.5 million for Waterbury Dam. There's about 400,000, 500,000 more of that that may be used for design documents. The Army Corps of Engineers is requiring that we fully have our state match when they go to construction, and they're going to construction sometime in 26. So this will cover that. The municipal pollution grants. So this one, if you go, the clean water, the section that deals with the clean water appropriations. We've traditionally put aside 10, 15 million dollars per year for clean water projects. So the projects are recommended by the Clean Water Fund Board. So what you see in section the clean water, if you go back to section 9. If you look on FY '24, you'll see a list of projects here. Water quality grants, the Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund, that's our state match. The federal 1 to 5 Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund, that's our state match. That's our normal. Forestry Access Road, and VHCD. Those amounts were all recommended by the Clean Water Fund Board for those particular projects. They also recommended 3.3 million for municipal pollution grants. Municipal pollution grants are state dollars only, with no federal dollars coming in through the infrastructure bill for the municipal pollution grants. We checked that out in joint fiscal office. Because that was my question as well. Is that 10 million that the government put? Is there any match? No, it's all state dollars. So we looked at what the Clean Water Fund Board recommended. 3.3 million is what they recommended. So we said, we'll do 4 million instead of the 10 out of the cash. And if you look at FY '25 in the clean water section, you will see on lines 84, you will see $10 million in FY '25. That will already incorporate the municipal pollution grants for FY '25. Because we've always funded the municipal pollution grants. We have caught up on our commitments. This is for like CSO projects, this is for phosphorus removal. And these are grants directly from municipalities. And we've always, in the next year, because we don't know what's coming in for the request from the Clean Water Fund Board, we always just put a block amount of money. And then next year, when we come back in January, the Clean Water Fund Board will make their requests, make their recommendations for each line item. And the municipal pollution grants is always part of that. So that's why we brought that down to 4 million. In fact, it's more than what the Clean Water Fund Board recommended. They recommended 3.3. And we kept the maintenance facilities at Clemson and Groton for some parks, that's where they keep all of their equipment. And the Fish and Wildlife major maintenance, again, we consolidated enough of theirs and gave flexibility to move money around, so we cut that down a little bit too, just because they have some flexibility in all of the cash. And then when we looked at the District 8 facility, this is an AOT project. And we just said, wait a minute here, this is something that's new to the capital bill. They have money elsewhere. We can get them to at least maybe put a foundation or lay a slab. They have to do work for the intersection. They have to do work for water and sewer. There's other money in the AOT world. And we zeroed that at 3.5.
You can give them a nickel, thanks a lot. It's all ready to go, that project.
It's gonna go.
Is that St. Albans?
Yeah,
Yeah.
ready to go.
The
Yeah.
problem, I guess the problem I have with that one, the problem I have with that is really, if we are to believe climate change, and I know that everybody in this building is rabid about it, that is the one project that makes the most sense to get those trucks off the road. You've got 15 trucks on every storm going extra miles, time and time and time again, through cities and concerns and all of that. And they are the biggest polluters that we have. And I think that the $3.5 million there could be, we could find it someplace else to some of the projects that probably aren't quite so important to climate as what that one is right there. So that is, the only thing I really wanted to spout out here today. We're gonna have a lot more adjustments, I'm sure, but just giving you my thoughts on that. If we are to stay with our goals of climate, that's a big one.
So that's the dollar piece. If you want, I can go through some of the money, some of the language.
Yeah, absolutely, please.
I have the big version here. And I'm just gonna briefly go through, this is page 4. This is where at the bottom of page 4, I don't know what it is, yeah, you got the big, so bottom of page 4, that's a check-in on the State House HVAC, which they would give a status report to both of our committees in September through January.
Which line?
20 and 21, so the bottom of 4 and it's the
Yeah,
top of 5.
Yeah.
And then if you go on page 5 to lines 18
Yeah.
to 20, this is where we, we also did it in 4 as well. Language for the HVAC system. We got 300,000 for 700,000 25. If you flip the page, you'll see the language for that is that BGS would evaluate and develop a design for the upgrades and replacement. And then the next between lines 3 and 6 just kind of gives that flexibility of, do you do something in the interim or do you kind of connect it with a longer term for that?
And that's for all the correctional facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chipman and Rutland are already,
Already,
yeah, it's for the other 2. And that number 2 on lines 8 through 11, again, is a check-in that they have to do for us. You don't have that?
Oh, here it is, sorry. I was trying to be subtle.
Page 6.
Okay.
So that's what we did there. Now, we go quite a ways before we do any language. We go to page 22. Section 17. This is gonna change. 17 and 18 is gonna change because when I presented this to appropriations committee yesterday, we in the capital bill give authorization for the projects, but we don't have the spending authority to say, yes, this amount is appropriated and shall be expended. But we had a conversation because we've got 49, 50 million, 52 million in cash, general fund to our bill. We want to make sure that the projects that are being funded through the general fund can be traced. Because you're gonna have to go back, and what bill do you go back on to see? Do you do the capital bill or do you do the appropriations? Some of these projects also have bonded dollars. So we decided to list the projects in the capital bill with the amount. So this is what section 17 takes care of, that reserve fund. And section,
18 is bonded.
no, 18 is, I'm gonna find where 18
It's on
is.
page 26.
18 is the 32 million.
Okay.
So the 17 is the 7 million. Page 20 through 2 through 26, section 17 is the 7 million in the cash reserve, as well as the 10 million in FY 25. That's both.
What page are we on now? So I apologize.
22,
Well, start with 22, and that contains the 7 million plus the FY 25, you said. In other words, it just spells out what the money's for.
right. If you go on page 24 to line 14, that's your FY 25
Yeah.
capital projects for the reserve fund, which will come up to 10 million.
There's the language in here to open up the libraries again.
And then on page 26,
Subject to approval there.
which is section 18, is 32 million that's still.
And then section 26 is 32 million. Now, there's going to be an amendment from the House Appropriations Committee, Becky's gone, that really kind of combines 17 and 18 into one section, that lists all the projects. The projects are also going to be listed in the appropriations bill and the amounts, but it's the authority to spend the money is going to come from the appropriations committee, not us, because we can't authorize spending general fund. So that's what that is.
So that ends on page 28, right?
Yes. So then on page 28, if you go down to section 19, lines 17 to 18, we are agreeing with the governor to BGS to list sale of properties for real estate agents that are licensed by the state. The third time is the charm.
That's all.
We haven't agreed to that in the past. We agreed to this.
An honest one. Okay.
So section 20, line, page 29, sale of properties. We agreed to sell 110 State Street, but we are offering to the city of Montpelier the right of first refusal, and they have to do this within a year. And if they can't come together and do something within a year, then this section would terminate, and the city is authorized to go ahead and sell the property.
Has the city expressed any interest in it?
Yes, they wanted the right of first refusal.
Okay.
So we did that. Stanley Hall and Wasson Hall, we have a bill on the wall. Where the property is, where Stanley and Wasson stood, we have demolished those two buildings. It's about 2.8 acres up in the Waterbury complex. The town of Waterbury has shown some interest in wanting to purchase that property, that land, to do some affordable housing. We had that in, but it was very, we want to do this, but there's been no formal action. So what we have done on page 30, lines with the whole page.
Yeah.
We're giving authority to sell the building and to sell the property to the town of Waterbury, but there needs to be some conditions. BGS needs to notify the town in writing about the right to Waterbury of their right to purchase. Waterbury Select Board needs to take a formal action indicating the town's interest in purchasing or acquiring the properties. They haven't done that to date. BGS needs to conduct a site survey so we know where the parameters are. And BGS needs to determine no other state department or agency has use for the properties. And the deed includes a restriction limiting the use of the properties in subdivision 1 to housing. If the town rejects or fails to accept the offer in a timely manner, the property is not for sale. BGS can't sell it to other parties.
So then,
Because Waterbury is the only one that's showing any interest in it. And it's right in front of our right in front of our own buildings. It's not by the road, it's further back.
It's just land,
2.8 acres.
2.8 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing at Cherry Street Road. You give it up.
Yeah, Cherry Street 108, where Burlington was really concerned. They wanted a right of first refusal, so they're giving Burlington a right of first refusal. And in 21, there's also concern from the city of Burlington about those direct services departments,
Oh,
the
yeah.
DCF, DEC, that the BGS would work with the city to find another appropriate downtown.
Services,
Hmm.
yeah. That's fair, yeah.
So we put that in. See, we do good work.
Oh,
When we're
it's just
given time.
fantastic, yeah. Can't praise you enough.
I just love it. We go back a long time. We've made a lot of deals. On page 32, this is language that's around our process in terms of that capital infrastructure reserve fund and the recommendations for capital projects that come through the regular governors recommend needs to indicate which ones are coming from the capital reserve fund. And also we're putting in at the bottom of page 32 that there would be a reallocation process for those cash, the money from the reserve fund that doesn't get out the door in a timely manner for the projects, because we just want to keep using for other projects.
And 5 years is a timely.
Yeah, yes, 5 years. It's 2 years we do a whoopsie, but we've given them a full 5 years.
Yeah,
Right?
in 2 years, you would require agencies to report the unspent balances, what their plans are, what their timeline is, and then in 5 years, I think it's the intent that those funds could be pulled back and reallocated.
Pull back the reality. So, page 33, here comes the fund. Here comes the fund, the DOC. There was a lot of concern in my committee about when we do renovations or maintenance issues of construction and correctional facilities. And we do it in such a manner that it really helps our staff in there and also our residents. The facility's allowed, there's a lot of harsh lighting. They're tough to be for everyone. So this is section 23, line 17 on page 33, changes statute. It requires by law that, in the language on the top of 34, the BGS will coordinate with DOC on the design and planning of any maintenance, renovation, or construction to state correctional facility that ensures evidence-based design principles for wellness environments are incorporated in those renovations or constructions. And it is incorporated in the design and planning phase of the project.
They don't do that, no?
No, we want to
What do
be,
you
they're
mean by
starting to.
wellness?
Hmm?
What do you mean by wellness?
This is a technical term for trauma informed. This is a technical term for trauma informed. People are saying that the renovations or the design of a building needs to take into consideration trauma informed processes to really help the residents and the staff that are there. And
So
this
that's
is
the
the,
wellness environment.
yeah, this is the technical definition of that.
And who decides that?
It's going to be DOC and BGS together. And this is the goal that DOC has been saying right along, that they need to really soften the interior environment of our facilities.
Yeah.
And be more cognizant of the trauma that our residents have experienced in their life, both male and female, as well as staff.
I love the video we had of Maine, that prison for Maine, is that correct?
Yeah.
That was, you saw that too. didn't you?
Yes, and that's trauma informed.
Oh, okay, that was very well
Yeah.
presented. I think
That's the model that we're trying.
They got the model there. It looks like it's something that'll, you know, now you've got some future things, so instead of just getting out behind bars.
Exactly, and that's what we're changing law to make sure that
Well,
the,
I think time has come for that.
you know, like when we're doing the St. Albans booking, that's
Yeah.
booking area, incorporate this, because it's also working for people coming in and out, booked in and booked out, but also your staff is working there.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So it's looking at that, it's looking at that with the door controls, someone saying, you know, in St. Johnsbury, you're doing the door controls, so you've got to move those residents out of that wing. Can you soften the lighting in those wings that you're doing the door controls? BGS, Eric went back, or Jennifer went back to their energy office, find out, could this happen? They said yes, and the dollars would come out of SMRF. So we can coordinate when we're doing a renovation, like door controls, you can coordinate something else to soften that unit. So that's the intent of this.
Yeah, so one way to compliment everybody's doing it nationwide, I guess.
So that leads us to the next one, section 24. This is the, when we were taking testimony on the booking area for St. Albans, the issue came up with the federal marshals, because we had federal marshal detainees. I think for about 60 beds through our system. They do come in mostly through St. Albans.
Yeah.
That puts pressure on the booking. We have about 8,000 people that come through that booking area on a yearly basis. It was designed for about 600 because it was built back in the early 70s. The other issue that is starting to percolate out there is ICE. And that's part of the federal marshal's contract.
What?
ICE, immigration.
Oh, okay.
And so we are holding, some folks are crossing the border and ICE is picking them up. So the concern from the committee is we're doing this construction work in this booking area because of our detainees and our folks coming in and out. The federal detainees coming in and out, as well as some ICE folks. So we've put in language that we're asking the Secretary of Human Services to request federal funds to support this capital construction of this booking area. And once the Commissioner of Finance is notified by the Secretary that the request has been submitted, the 600,000 to begin planning for this booking area is released. So we can't spend that until they get the okay from the Commissioner of Finance and Management, the Secretary to apply for these funds. And then in B, it's talking about what would be incorporated in that booking expansion. There would be renovations to the HVAC system while they're there. There would be enhancing employee amenities, such as addressing their health or wellness needs, the use of renewable energy, and 4, the use of evidence-based principles for wellness environments for supporting trauma-informed practices. So that got incorporated in that St. Albans booking area. Page 35, section 25, this is for the replacement of the women's facility. So by January of next year, Commissioner BGS is going to be looking for land. And we have put in that our intent is that our preference would be for state-owned property. And if you can't find, and for co-locating the facilities in a campus-style approach. And if you can't do that, then you have to look at different locations for separate facilities. And they have to check in with us between September 15th, each month, starting September 15th through December 15th, just to keep us in the loop. They're gonna be looking for land. And both, they need about 20 to 25 acres to do the campus style for both the correctional and the reentry base.
So when they're looking for the land, do they have the ability to sound out the community involved?
They're gonna have to,
Yeah.
that's why,
Okay,
they're gonna be on.
it
the
doesn't say
road.
that, I just,
No, that's the process.
The governor has been very clear, he wants reaching out to communities first.
Oh,
Yeah, otherwise, geez, they
Yeah.
can deal with it.
I mean, you can find a lot of good land, but
We've been through this.
It's not gonna be easy, yeah. we've been-
No,
Some of us at Springfield was the last one.
Yeah, yeah.
Dick and I have been
Yeah,
through this.
yeah.
We went through it in Newport and St. Albans,
They all been,
in St. Johnsburg.
they had a big, Springfield wanted a big wish list, we had the chiefs and highway, do this, do that, we gave them everything.
You did.
Yeah, that was your district.
Wastewater.
Yeah, I think we got a car for yourself.
Somebody said I brought home the gravy train. It wasn't pork, it was gravy train. Anyway, so going down to B, line 17, this is the intent of the design of the women's facility. There's a lot of concern in the House about how we're moving forward. So again, we would incorporate the use of evidence-based principles for wellness environments for supporting trauma-informed practices. That's laid out. Belts and suspenders for the law that we're putting in. And then we're having a report back. This is section 26. And it's our intent in the state's long-term goal and vision for justice-involved individuals that includes their reentry into the community through a system of supports that is grounded in a restorative justice principles. So when folks are reentering, they're there with the community supports that are employing restorative justice principles. Then for the facility itself, on or before November 15th, DOC, we need to submit a written report to our committees and judiciary committees regarding the proposed size and scale of the women's facility. We don't want to get hung up in bed counts. Everybody's going to get wrapped around bed counts. And we really need to understand what those beds are used for. Some are specialized. They're booking, they're infirmary beds, they're not general population. So the bed counts, people are going to have to understand what those beds are used for. So the report needs to address the allocation of beds between the incarcerated piece and the reentry piece. And those bed types for specialized populations would need to be laid out, and the data and rationale behind those decisions for the beds and the size of the facility. So we've incorporated that. Okay. In 27, this is kind of new for the Barry Courthouse, to engage the city in Barry for options in renovating the courthouse or finding a new location, because this courthouse is really landlocked. There's no issues on that one.
State house. There we go.
And then we are saying in section 28 for the continued use of the pavilion, those rooms that we as the legislature have been using on that second floor, the next session. That's what that says. The state house expansion, this lays out what I explained, that in June, we'll be getting the programming options and then a schematic design in November of 2023. And it's the intent of the General Assembly to approve the programming option for a schematic design plan as soon as practical. This is where we have set up this special committee consisting of the Joint Legislative Management Committee, and the chairs of our two committees. And committees would meet, approve, or recommend alterations to the schematic design. And in making the decision, the committee would look how the design impacts the ability of the General Assembly to conduct its business, allow public access to citizens, the financial consequences to the state, with approval or disapproval, whether any potential alternatives are viable, and are paid for in the provisions. So, and that's really kind of about.
Good job. Good work, Alice. A lot of work.
Don't change it too much, because I get this pretty well memorized. We noticed.
Well, after tomorrow, you'll have to
Alice,
worry.
we know you're a very intelligent woman and you're able to rememorize.
Yeah, that's not by much.
Same spiel she did last year.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see what happens on the floor. It's up tomorrow afternoon.
How do you feel about that?
I think it'll be fine. We had a caucus of the whole.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest issue was the women's correctional facility.
Really?
Yeah, that was the biggest issue that folks were concerned, and that the language we put in is really helped them. I hope they have the same, I hope they have the same interest for the men.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I
Yeah, that's
just need to
fine.
remind you. Sorry.
Thank you
Thank you.
very
I'm
much. Appreciate it.
gonna go back up on the floor.
Hey, tell me one more time why Dick is here, or maybe you can tell Dick about the, the committee that the person I'm supposed to appoint for what committee,
Oh,
because
it's
he's
the access board.
the access
We
board.
haven't had a meeting. I mean, nobody said anything yet.
Yeah, they're not connecting, so I said I would
Yeah,
connect.
just talk with.
Because it's
With-
the chairs.
With Phil and, yeah, with Phil.
He calls it.
Yeah, it's the chairs of the institutions committees.
Oh, what do we give us the authority to do now?
Well, this board meets once a month, and it's to provide variances to ADA requirements
Jeez,
in buildings.
this is new, this is brand new.
No, this is, Bob Wood was on this.
Sabrina
Who was on it
Carriage.
last year?
Sabrina's on it,
Yeah, who
and
was-
Elizabeth Peoples is on it.
Was it Joe that was on it last year?
Was Joe Benning on it
Joe
last
on it
year?
last
It
year?
was Jenny Lyons was on it when she was a member of this committee.
Oh, yeah, well, that was a long while ago.
Yeah.
Sure, we haven't had anybody there for a while then.
Well, we tried to get it was Dick McCormick that got appointed at
Oh,
the
he was
end.
on this. last year.
Yeah, and then we didn't have any projects, so there was no meetings.
Okay.
And they meet the last Monday of the month, from about 1:30 to 3.
Yeah.
It's through the Division of Fire Safety. And we've been doing it by teams. We used to do it in person, but it's once a month. So it's your committee on committees. that-
Yeah, well, he has to call the meeting, yes. Just wait for him.
Yeah, so that needs, because they're waiting for someone from the Senate. We had a meeting on Monday afternoon, and they said they're waiting for somebody, and I said, well, I'll check.
What do you think, Senator Harrison?
Well, I was thinking of Senator Harrison. She didn't want to left the room, so there you
Yeah.
go.
And I'm not sure about the Art and State Buildings Advisory. No, I think there's a senator on that, isn't there?
Yeah,
Isn't that the House and Senate chairs?
I thought it was the institutions.
Chairs, but it's definitely, there's definitely
Yeah.
reps from both sides.
Yeah, the Art and State Buildings Advisory Council Committee. And it's made up,
Oh, I want to put pictures of cars up in here instead of these things, you know.
go through David Sheets.
This is for all the other
Yeah,
buildings.
thanks a lot.
We're good, we can take this off.
But you need to also look at that